Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience live, Northern Trust DraftKings viewer chat. We can talk about whatever you want. Get your questions into the queue right now. Also, don't be scared to become a member of FantasyNational.com right now. The race for $2 million in winnings is up there, at least just since the beginning of March. I think if we include more than that, we're already there. But $1.9 million and just screenshots sent to me through Twitter from members of FantasyNational.com so far this season. So let's get up to that number. Customization, lineup building tools, event simulation, ownership projections, lineup builder, the entire stat base for everything. So get on that now. Go and check out Monday and Tuesday's show with Jeff Bergerson and Jeff Feinberg, DK and Bets. There's also giveaways in there as well for 20 DK bucks, so you might want to get into that. Plus, give the episode a like and leave an iTunes review if you have the time. If not, make some time. Do it anyway. Reid Fowler from DK Live is joining me on the line, as he does for all of these. What's going on, Reid?
Nothing much. Traveling man. You're back in the studio. Good to have you back.
Yeah, I'm back in the studio, and you're like in a pop-up studio, and I can hear everything going on behind you. So that's perfect. You tell everyone to shut up.
Yeah, I'm gonna try, but these guys, they don't know how to shut up. So
well, you tell them, Pat Mayo and the viewers, tell them to shut their gubs and see what they do. How about
Pat Mayo
that?
said, "Shut your gubs."
There we go.
Just kidding.
Who, me?
Just kidding.
Now, no. Tell them I'm not kidding. Tell them to shut their gubs and move on their way. Go for lunch or something like that. We got Northern Trust to get to. I've tweeted out the picks cheat sheet. I've tweeted out the DK cheat sheet. You can find both. The picks cheat sheet is up with all my bets, first round leaders and such, up on my Facebook page. The DK cheat sheet is up on DKPlaybook.com. Let's get right into this. You ready, Reid?
Yep. Let's go.
All right. Smoking Guns 40 asks, Stars and Scrubs, the best way to go this week? And then he says, possible that any of the guys that are pretty much guaranteed the next 2 weeks actually give a damn about this tournament and play well. Hence Brooks Koepka. I'm never going to try to project who cares and who doesn't onto anything, but the track record of FedEx Cup winners in the playoffs are all big names who are almost assured a spot into the finals, as it was, and they show up and play every time anyway. Like most of these guys usually end up winning, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. I don't mind Stars and Scrubs. I think it's a viable strategy this week, and I think a lot of people will go for it because we've seen so many big name winners. But I think if you start your teams with like Day or even with Justin Rose, that you can build a more, not necessarily balanced lineup, but a very condensed core where you can have access to a lot of guys in the $7,000 area without blowing your load up top. Like I made like a Justin Thomas, Jason Day team as one of my 20, or two of my 20, but it's more of that one big guy and the rest down in the $7,000 area, like mid 8,000. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can really approach it on preference too. If you want to do balance, like you were saying, the guys in the 9 and 8K range, they have a lot of talent. You see Hideki at 8.8, you have Jay Rose at 9.9. And you have a lot more, like you were saying, to play with in that lower 7K range. You don't have to go down to sub 6, but like you were saying, there are guys down below 7K that you can put in your roster and feel decently comfortable with. You have Charlie Hoffman, you have Putnam down there, you have some other guys that are in that upper 6K range that if you want to go Stars and Scrubs and say, hey, look, Brooks Koepka is one of the hottest golfers right now. Dustin Johnson's the number one in the world. JT, whoever, Tiger. If you want to play these guys, you can because you're not really losing much. The guys in the 6K range are not going to win, but if they can get you a top 20, you're in pretty good shape. So it really is preference. I'm doing a little bit of both. I'm leaning a little bit more towards balance just because that's my preference, but I'm totally fine with Stars and Scrubs.
All right, next question comes from Matt Jones. He asks, have you guys heard any news on where the scoring range may fall? Is this looking to be a higher scoring tournament or below 10 under? I think right around 10 under is where it could go with. If someone gets a hot putting week and plays out of their mind, they could approach like that Hunter Mahan number from 2014 when he got to 14 under. But the rough is thick. You need to hit fairways. They can be very penal if you don't hit greens and regulation. So you're going to see a lot of birdies traded with bogeys. But the opportunity for clean rounds is out there, so there could be a low score or two. It's going to be hard to sustain that, I think at least, for all 4 rounds. So I'm going to say, yeah, 10 under sounds about like the number, somewhere in between a super hard course and a birdie fest, but difficult nonetheless. Like, I would imagine that the cut line might be like +1 or +2. That would be my projection right now. So that's what I'm going with. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say -12. I mean, there have been whispers that this could potentially host a U.S. Open or a major. Again, it's the first leg of the playoffs, and Ridgewood has always had, and the last time we saw it in 2014, it's had thick rough, and so if the guys aren't hitting it in the fairway, it's going to be tough. So I'd say around 12 or 13. Look, we've always predicted these guys are good, right? These guys are good. They can obviously rattle off birdies, but I think it's more going to be a get your par. Don't get those. Stay away from those big numbers. Avoid bogeys, and then when you can score in sort of the back portion of the front nine, or in some of these par fives, score when you can. So I'd say probably around -12, -13 would be my guess.
All right, Clark asked, do you like Gay this week? That would be Brian Gay. I do like Brian Gay. I'm using him in a bunch of lineups. I bet him top 20 for the week. I don't have any expectations that he can win, but just looking at the leaderboard from past events at Ridgewood, the 2014, 2010, and 2008, you see similar types of players to Brian Gay up there. Like I keep referencing the Matt Kuchar style of play.
Yep.
We've seen Furyk up there. We've seen Steve Stricker up there at this course. Not to say the Bombers can't win. They definitely can, obviously. But he's someone who's going to hit a ton of fairways. He's been lights out. I mean, he was lights out with his approaches last week at Wyndham. I don't expect him to gain like 4.2 again. But if he gains like 2 strokes through approach, keeps up the solid off the tee game, and the one thing that he does better than most players on tour is putt. Highly variable when it comes to putting, but he is historically a very good putter. And I do think that putting means more almost this week at this course than almost any other. It's going to be hard to predict it, but looking back over the past 100 rounds, past 200 rounds, Brian Gay is always at the top of those charts, inside the top 10 percentile. So I do like Brian Gay a lot. I think that you don't need him to win. You don't need him to top 10, but like a T13 would be excellent for Brian Gay at his price point.
Yeah, if you look at guys that are $100 less than him, like your boy Keegan or some of these other guys, I mean, who gives you the most trust in that low 7K range? Brian Gay, and I think Kenny Kim actually tweeted this out in terms of the cuts that he's made in terms of his price range in this price range, and it's pretty good. It's pretty impeccable when you're talking about a guy who's regularly in these more elite tournaments priced down a lower 7K range. He's made a lot of cuts, like you were saying. He's great at putting short-term and long-term, and if you look at where he's potentially not as good, right, is his distance. He's ranked, I believe, in the top 10 in proximity at 200 plus. So if he has to hit those long irons, he is a guy that I do trust as much as you can, right, with guys in the low 7K. He's one guy that I do trust potentially over a Russell Henley, for instance, and would be totally fine rostering Brian Gay.
All right, next question comes from William. Thoughts on Rory Sabbatini? I'm not using any Rory this week. He has no top 10s on the year, and that's going to be really difficult because he doesn't tend to play in the strongest fields to begin with. He can definitely make the cut. He could be a decent play, but I just don't see, I talked about, like, even at his price point, like Gay, we've seen Gay spike in some of these events, and the one elite skill that Gay has is his putting. He can get on a roll, and then he can compete along with his scrambling game at a venue where the winning score could be -10. Rory Sabbatini could do that, but if he makes the cut, he's far more likely to come like T55 than he is like T12. When we've seen him spike inside the top 20, it's been in a lot of these lesser events against weaker fields. Plus, he doesn't hit a ton of fairways, which could come back to bite him at this course. So it's a full fade for me on Rory Sabbatini.
Yeah, same here. If there's one guy in that 7K range that I like, specifically on Rory's number, it's going to be Grillo. I think finally we see Grillo at an ownership where it's not double digits, not super inflated. So I do like Grillo. He is that Kuchar-esque type player where he can hit his irons, keep it in the fairway, and hopefully just show that he's obviously one of the best putters over the last 24 rounds. And so I do like Grillo as opposed to Rory. Rory always pops, right? We talked about it earlier this season that he pops in these stronger tournaments, but towards the end, potentially playing a lot of tournaments during the season, we might see some fatigue set in. Not trying to predict fatigue or how guys are and what they're feeling, but I'd rather go with Grillo as opposed to Sabbatini.
Mark asks, Malk with a C, asks, who's the best pivot under $7,000? And realistically, everyone's a pivot underneath $7,000. The only two that seem to be garnering a lot of ownership are Chris Kirk and Joel Dahmen. So anyone who's not them is basically a pivot play. Like I used a share of Landry in one lineup. I believe I can actually go look and tell you who I've used from down here. Landry, I used a little bit of Bo Hostler, a little bit of Lahiri, Ryan Armour. Putnam, Brian, that was it. And Kevin Chappell at $6,900 were the guys that I sprinkled through a few lineups when I wanted to either squeeze in like Day and Thomas into a lineup or Day and Rose into a lineup and wanted one other mid-tier guy with them. That's the route that I went. But I have very low exposure to guys in the $6,000 area.
Yeah, same here. I think another one that I do like is Charlie Hoffman. But if you wanted to pivot off of a Dahmen, who potentially is bad chalk, if you wanted to pivot off of Brendan Steele, who's not playing that well, there are guys that I do like. So like you were saying, Putnam is one of them. Even Adam Hadwin at 6,300 is someone I'm potentially sprinkling some lineups in. So pivots, for me, I'm not playing Dahmen just because I think his ownership is double digits, and that's just bad chalk for me. But yeah, Putnam and the guys you talked about are the guys that I do like.
Keegan Bradley, is this the week to go full Keegan? That is what Benjamin Cisco asks. I think it's never, listen, you never go full Keegan. That's a recipe for disaster. I believe I've used him in 2 of 20 lineups. I like from the ball striking perspective what he can do, but the short game and especially the putting really do worry me. That I think that he has upside. He's made 5 consecutive cuts. He keeps getting a ton of strokes with his irons. That's really encouraging to see, but he can just give it all away so quickly if those irons are just off a little bit. I like that he hits fairways. Yeah. Love the ball striking, but it's a short game that would keep him out of being like a core player for me. He's a periphery player.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys in that area, again, that I'd rather take shots on. Keegan is someone that we always look at that name, especially when he's in this low 7K range, that you want to play because you want to make a point. You want to kind of make a story about how Keegan can do well. He's par 4 scoring, especially at strokes gained. He's not doing well. And like you were saying, his around the green game is, it's faltering in his putting, right? You mentioned early in your shows that this week, as opposed to many others this season, putting is going to matter. You have these small greens. You might be coming in with a longer iron. And so around the green and short game and putting is going to matter. And Keegan is just not doing it. So no for me.
Clark asks, is this a good course for Xander Schauffele? Potentially so. If he can continue when he's playing well, he hits it long and he hits it about as straight as anyone, which is exactly what you want to do here. The problem is if that part of his game isn't on, he's better than Keegan Bradley, but it's a lot of the same thing. Yes, he does putt better. I mean, once you get him off Bermuda grass, his putting stats are actually in the positive, or he's a negative putter on Bermuda. But it's always the short game with Xander. So if those irons aren't dialed in, like I've seen him flub so many chips this year that with the rough being so thick at Ridgewood, the potential for bogeys and blow-ups are huge for Xander right now. I do like the fact that when he gets into these really strong fields that he competes. It's one of the reasons that I like Kisner this week, but I just trust the short game of Kisner more than I trust it for Schauffele. I think that he's going to come in lower owned. I'm not personally using him, but you could definitely talk yourself into him and have it be a good play. I wouldn't say fade him because he's no good. He just didn't fit what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm going one potential Xander above him and Alexander Noren. I think Noren is a better play for me in that spot. And like you're mentioning too, right? Xander does show up in these bigger tournaments, but now you have Noren at 7,900. We also kind of see him at this price range in bigger tournaments, right? It's when Noren gets sub 8K, I really like his value. When it gets above, right, in that 8.5 range and doesn't really give us a top 10 on the PGA Tour, we've seen on the Euro Tour, then that's a little scary. But Noren was one of the elites, is still one of the best Euro golfers. He's on the Ryder Cup team. So I'd rather pay up a little bit more and have a little bit more faith in Alex Noren as opposed to Xander Schauffele. But if you want to play Xander, it's fine. Like you said, he plays well. He plays up to his competition. So I'm fine with that. I'm going with Noren, though.
Yeah, I like Noren a little bit more, and I even paid down right below Schauffele for Poulter and Kevin Na as well. I like their skill set fits and their consistency for what their skills actually are more than Schauffele, who is a bit of boom or bust, to be perfectly honest. He probably has higher upside if we ran this tournament like 100 times. Schauffele would probably win the most of any of those 4 guys, but he'd probably come last the most as well. So it depends on how you really want to build. I like the consistency of those guys. And I'm not saying they can't win. They definitely can, but if we're just trying to track out like top 15s and top 10s from that range, I'm good with those other guys over Schauffele. Next question. Thoughts on Streelman? Streelman's fine. He's sort of the skill set that you want, but bad short game, can't putt. So he needs to be perfect with everything that he does. Good performance here over the years at this track, but not for me.
Yeah, we saw some narratives about Streelman last time this course was played here, I believe in 2008. And when he was in, I think it was that playoff with BJ. And that's when he was his rookie year, I believe, too, on the PGA Tour. So he does have some course history here. But in terms of his play and his current form, not for me. So no one Streelman for me.
Smoking Guns back in the chat asks, is this a week to go all in on Tiger Woods? I certainly hope not, because I have zero Tiger. I really went with my 3 guys at the top and just rolled the dice down the list a little bit more. So I'm going with Thomas, I'm going with Day, I'm going with Rose as my big 3, and then I sprinkled in Molinari and Webb Simpson into that mix in that lower $9,000 tier. So he just got left on the cutting room floor because I only ended up playing 20 lineups. But if he doesn't have to hit driver, Tiger could definitely win. If we get into a situation where he does have to hit driver and try to keep it accurate, no chance.
Yeah, Jeff Ulrich's all in on Tiger. He was very serious on our shows earlier this week, to the point where I was a little worried about him. But yeah, like you said, Tiger is a top golfer. He's, the narrative of Tiger playing this well back when he first got on tour, when he was playing the Wyndham, was sort of inconceivable. But we now see him priced more correctly priced towards what he's doing in his finishing and how he's playing. And so I will have some shares going all in on Tiger. If that means 100% of your lineups with Tiger, I think that's too risky. Like you were saying, there's guys that I'd rather pay down to, like Jay Rose, even potentially sprinkling in John Rahm if you wanted to, as opposed to going all in on Tiger. Like you said, if he doesn't hit driver, he doesn't have to. If he wants to hit his 3-wood, his driving wood, then he can. But like you were saying, he's got to be elite with those long irons. And so for me, I have some sprinkles of Tiger, just not all in.
All right, next one. Thoughts on Terrell Hatton this week? I like Hatton. I'm using 4 of 20 lineups with Hatton in him. I bet him to win. I just like that when he's such a grinder, and these are the type of courses that I like. It's the same thing with Norin, that they can plug away. They can make their 10-foot putts. They can save themselves from around the green, and they can both hit a lot of fairways. I don't think that they really excel in any one area, but they're above average in anything. And that's almost the same reason I like Patrick Reed this week, is that I like these grinder-type guys. They're not going to go out and win at minus 25. They're not going to just overwhelm the course like DJ and Brooks can and potentially get themselves into trouble. They'll play within themselves and just save their pars, make some birdies on the easier holes, and hopefully that's good enough. So I do like Hatton.
I'm not playing. I do like Hatton. Let's get one. I like Hatton as a player.
Sounds like you hate him. Sounds like you hate his guts.
I don't like him for this tournament. The reason why, where he's priced a little pricey for me at 8,100. Yes, he's playing better. We've seen him pop in some of the majors later on the season. But for me, I'm looking at, and this is one of your boys, but potentially not one of the guys you're playing. I like Bubba Watson this week. Again, if he's wayward off the tee, he's toast. But I do like him. There is correlation a little bit to some courses that he's done well at, obviously Riviera being one of them. If he can keep it in the fairway and he can gain strokes off the tee, with his putting now coming a little bit back, I do like Bubba at 8,000. And so Hatton for me is going to be a fade. The same way you're fading Tiger at the top, there was some guys that I had to fade in this 8K range because there's a lot of guys that I like. So I'm fading Hatton for me.
Let's go. Well, the next question here from Bryce says, hey, Pat and Reed. Pat's cheat sheet says Hatton's a good play. Reed's article says he's a fade. Those are the two reasons why I like him and you don't like him this week. And so there you go, Bryce. Greg asked, thoughts on Phil's ownership this week? Feels like there's no talk and crazy to see him so low priced. He is incredibly low priced. It's probably the week to take Phil if you're a big Phil supporter and you think he can play well at this track. I worry about his off the tee game here. That, again, it's a lot like with Tiger right now, but his game isn't clicking like Tiger's is. So if he starts getting wonky with the driver, he might not have the approach game to back it up. He did hit these approaches very well at the PGA Championship. That was the first time he was truly good at that in some time. Obviously, the scrambling game is good, but when we think about Phil around the green, we always think about the immaculate shots and the great recoveries he makes. And we always forget about the ones he skulls trying to make some sort of ridiculous shot. So I'd want a more consistent player for my team. If you want to take the shot on Phil, go ahead. I have him projected right now around 7%, so you're getting really low ownership. I just prefer other guys in that range for the builds that I'm trying to make this week and the skill sets that I'm trying to target.
Yeah, same here. Isn't this the tournament that Phil hit it off the stand? Like he hit a chip off the stands? Like in number 13 or 14.
Maybe.
Forget which hole it was. But this is the one I think he hit in the stands, and he actually chipped it from the stands. Again, that's not going to be something that we're projecting him to do, but that's sort of in a microcosm what Phil does is he gets a little wayward with his irons, and then has to, and that's why he's very elite with his short game, is that really He put a lot of time and effort into it. Right now for this course, and like you were saying, I totally agree with you. I'm not playing Phil, but if you want to, like, we're not going to see Phil if he comes within the top 10, top 15. You're not going to see Phil Price at this range. So if you do like him, then play him, but not for me. Especially when you have other guys like Billy Horschel that are playing a lot better than Phil, and guys that I like a lot better. So no Phil for me.
All right, let's go back to Smoking Guns 40. He's got another question in here. Thoughts on Spieth maybe getting a top 10 along with Reid? I like Reid to get the top 10. Feinberg bet Spieth, and he hates Spieth.
Wow.
I don't hate Spieth this week, but again, based on how I had to trim my core down when I looked at the $9,000 area, and Spieth's a lot like Phil this week. Like, you're not going to catch Spieth at that price realistically in most tournaments. So when you see him in the $9,000 range, I just prefer Rose, I prefer Webb at the lower price, and I prefer Molinari in that range as well. So it's a pass for Spieth on me.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take some sprinkles of Spieth. I do like the guys you're mentioning. And if you wanted to cut down your core, I'd be totally fine cutting out Spieth just because he can't, he's not performing up to snuff. And sort of the same vein of where you're seeing Spieth and what we just talked about with Phil, at 9,600, that's extremely cheap for one of the top players in the world. Granted, he is not playing well of late, and his putting woes are not, are pretty well publicized. But on POA, he is better against the field. And what we saw is that his putting does go, it swings pretty bad, to good to bad. I think he gained close to 6 strokes putting in the last couple of tournaments. And so if you think that he's going to keep up that putting, then I do like Spieth at 9,600. You can pair him with a top guy, and that's not a bad line to start. But if you want to fade him and not have him in your core, totally fine with that. But I'm playing him.
Dustin asks, Gay or Grillo in a GPP? I'm going Brian Gay.
Yeah, gotta go Gay.
Okay. Brian asks, thoughts on Joel Dahmen? This is going to be tricky. I'm not playing Joel Dahmen. He rates out incredibly well, and the ownership that I'm seeing him at right now, it's going to be anywhere between like 12 and 17%. It's really hard to get a gauge on some of these lower-end players in terms of their ownership projection, because a site like Fantasy National, anyone that's using him or anyone that's using that site or just stat models in general, Joel Dahmen is going to pop for them because he's been playing so well. So it's hard to translate how the people using models and stats versus the actual general public and something like the giant $5 GPP, how that ownership's going to shake out. But the problem is, even if he's 12%, is Joel Dahmen realistically a lot better than these guys in the $6,000 area? Yeah. Not really, because a lot of his stats have been put up. Maybe he is, and maybe I'm just wrong about this, but a lot of his stats have been put up against weaker fields. So it's compared to the field that he was playing in. Very rarely does Dahmen play in events where all the top players in the world are there. So for that reason, if he ends up being chalky down in that range, like 12, 13, 14%, I don't think that he has a better chance than like Kevin Chappell than coming inside the top 10. So I'll just take Kevin Chappell instead. Yeah. Do I really think that he has a better chance than Anherban Lahiri of finishing inside the top 20? I mean, not really, to be perfectly honest with you. So if you're getting one guy at like 1/8 of the ownership, logically, that only makes sense in my lineup. But if Dahmen comes through as chalk, my lineups are kind of screwed.
Right, exactly. And I think that you hit the nail on the head in that last point there. Like, Abraham Ancer and Joel Dahmen, I feel like both came on the scene at the same time, and I was kind of looking at both of them like, are these guys for real? And yes, we've seen Joel Dahmen play well in these sort of tier 2 tournaments, and Abraham Ancer is someone that I'm looking at a little bit closer and rather play him at his ownership and what he's doing. He's off the tee, he's gaining strokes. I think this entire season he hasn't lost strokes off the tee, and when you look at where he's priced and his ownership that's coming through, I'd much rather put 3 lineups, 2 out of 20 lineups with Abraham Ancer, because I've seen it with him in these tournaments as opposed to Joel Dahmen, especially if you're getting Dahmen at 12 to 15%. Bad chalk for me, Joel Dahmen, so I'm going to be fading him and going elsewhere with even other guys like Austin Cook. So fade for me.
Okay. Feels like Molinari is a course fit here and isn't being talked about. Is he in your lineups this week? Yes, he's in 40% of my lineups this week. And I'm never really a Molinari guy, so that should probably be a cue to not play Molinari, because I probably missed the boat on him, and now I'm jumping in way too late. But I think this course, with its tree-lined, just outside of the rough, thinner fairways, where you do have to really rely on driving accuracy, I think it can correlate a lot to Wentworth, where he had played so well earlier this season and won at the BMW PGA Championship over in Europe. So I like Molinari. I'm using him.
I like a guy a little bit lower than him more in terms of my core, Tommy Fleetwood. But yeah, Molinari is going to be in my lineups. He's in about 3 or 4 of 20 of my lineups. You can't fade one of the best golfers in the last, month and a half without potentially losing some risk. And so Molinari is a fine play. I'd rather go Tommy Fleetwood in terms of where I'm getting that ownership as opposed to Molinari, but totally fine with Molinari.
Justin asked, thoughts on Charlie Hoffman? I'm not using him. I know Jeff Bergerson was really big on him on Tuesday's DraftKings show, and you can go back and watch that to really get into why he likes Charlie Hoffman. But you had mentioned that you're in on him too. Why?
Yeah, just in terms of the style of play, he always shows up. I think he shows up for big tournaments. When you look at his proximity with the long irons, it's getting there to the point where, look, he's 98th in the FedEx Cup standings. So if he doesn't perform well, he potentially could go home after this tournament. So I do like Hoffman at his price. Again, I'd rather play Hoffman, right, like some of these other guys. So at his price, like he's not playing really well, and that's why he's priced down at 6,800. But if I'm putting 2 to 3 lineups out of 20 together with a Dustin Johnson or some of these other guys at the top, Charlie Hoffman is a guy that I like down in that range who has win equity, who's, like you said, in terms of talent, one of the best down in that range. So that's why I like him.
The one reason I really want to stay away from Charlie Hoffman in this situation really just comes down to short game. He's awful around the greens. Yeah. Now, we know that he can overcome that with supreme ball striking. We've seen tournaments like that before, but we start getting into the potential of why you need to cut guys off. And I really tried to condense the number of players that I used for my pool this week because I went back to 20 lineups from 25. Usually I have more success with 20. I don't know why that number is weird, but I went back and looked at all my results for the season. I've been better playing 20 lineups than 25. I don't know why. Maybe I try to get too creative with 25 and add in too many people. I'm really going to just cut it down and he can't chip. So if the ball striking isn't supreme, I feel like he just has blow-up potential all over the place.
Yeah, and if he's not hitting in the fairway, right, which was what we haven't seen of late, then you have a pretty bad recipe for disaster, or a pretty good recipe for disaster, right? Not getting in the fairway, has to chip out, the thick rough, and gets it around the greens, and then he can't get it up and down. That's bogey central. So if he can keep it in the fairway, if he can hit, if he can just match the field in terms of greens and reg, I do like Charlie Hoffman. So I'll be playing him, probably burning those lineups, but I do like him.
Kyle says, Spieth week, Putton's coming around. He did gain 7 strokes at the PGA Championship, which is sad because he only came 12th. So that really speaks to where the rest of his game is at right now. Over his past 5 tournaments, he's losing strokes tee to green, both off the tee and in approach, and he's a net 0 around the greens. And that's, at the beginning of the year when he wasn't putting, he was lights out tee to green. So it's possible Spieth gets it all on the same page and puts it together. He's that good. But we just have not seen any sort of consistency from him. Yeah. So maybe he gets the approaches back this week and he goes back to crappy putting. Then he's screwed. So that's one of the main reasons that he didn't make my cut.
Yeah, and maybe just Feinberg is right. Maybe he's a better bet than he is a DraftKings play. I just look at that price and I say 9,600 for Spieth. Yes, there's a reason why it's down there, but I want to take a few hits just because if that does for whatever reason come, like I've been playing Spieth when he was above this price, when he was above 10K. So I'm going to ride the Spieth train again, probably with my Hoffman lineups, potentially looking at pivoting off of some of the guys at the top there, Molinaris. If the Molinaris get a little bit too chalky, I don't mind paying up a little bit to Spieth to see if that guy now with the playoffs coming through, if he's coming back to form just a tad. So I'm going to be playing Spieth.
Yeah, I don't know how low-owned Spieth is going to end up being. I think that he'll end up around like 11 to 14% because it seems like the distribution of ownership for like the top 9 guys is pretty even. The only one that seems to be coming in low is Brooks, which is just kind of hilarious. But
always.
He could finish in the single digits, but that's really about it. There's not one guy who everyone's on, leaving a big gap. And maybe when we see the actual ownership after the tournament starts, maybe I'm way off on that. And there is one guy that everyone just talked themselves into, leaving a lot of other guys that would have made good pivots. Just right now, I can't identify who that is going to be because the distribution seems very even. Are either of us playing Pat Perez, Dustin asks? I am not.
No, I got to leave Patty P. He does so well for like 2.5, 3 rounds. But no for me.
Scott asks, can we go back to CT Pan this week? I think you can, actually. I like guys who finish second going into their next tournament.
Yeah, it was really sad to see him just shank it on the 72nd hole. I'm not going to be using CT Pan. I can see why that she would want to because, his approach game is solid. The ball striking is there. Tee to green obviously is there. For me, I think he gives up a little bit on distance. You don't need it here, but again, short game and putting scares me a little bit. I'm not on CTPN, but I like him as a player, but just not for this tournament for me.
Yeah, I'm going to be using him in my lineups this week. He's just one of those guys down in that like Keegan range, the Brian Gay range, just to make sure that I'm not overexposed and will have like 40% Brian Gay. I scaled that back to like 20%, and then like 10% on Keegan, like 10% on Pan, that kind of move. Next one, Fade Fleetwood? ? Fade Rose solely on ownership. Fleetwood is probably the next after Brooks that could come in with lower ownership. I'm not using him just because I picked other guys in that area, and I am using Rose. I really don't care. I think the Rose has a very good chance of winning, so I'm using him from that top end. But it doesn't seem, like I mentioned, that anyone is just going to be crazy high owned compared to the others around him. So I don't think there's any sort of like ownership plays or fades from the top end.
Yeah, actually, that's my core. I mean, Brooks and Tommy are the two guys that I'm playing the most, probably close to, like you were saying, 35, 40%, just because of that ownership and skill set. And Brooks is I don't know how he keeps on getting to this spot. And again, he's mentioned it, and there is a narrative of, well, he only wins major championships. And then when it comes to regular PGA Tours, he just doesn't. That's not the case. I think he has a really good chance of winning this thing. In terms of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And so I do like Brooks. I do like Tommy. And if you want to fade Rose on ownership and then build a case that maybe his back injury is potentially bad, then maybe, but you're fading one of the best golfers in the world this season. So be careful if you do that. I do like Rose, but Fleetwood and Brooks are two of my core guys.
Kyle asked, do you like HV3 for this course? 6,900 is a nice price. I'm not playing HV3 here.
Me neither.
I feel like he missed his time. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just, when you have these like mid-level guys that surge and everyone's using them, they all tend to hit a wall because they're not elite players. And I think we saw it last week at the Wyndham, of course, which did really set up well for him. And maybe it's because he was cursed, and maybe that's a reason to play him. The week off being Ander cursed, that he's going to be fine, but he didn't. I'd rather play Kevin Chappell. And I know Chappell is probably equally as risky, but I know the upside is there with Chappell because he's on a tier above Varner in terms of talent and track record as well.
Yeah, and when again you're looking at that price range, Chappell's there, Griot's there, some other guys that we talked about below HV3. You had a good run. You had a really good run. He had his chance. I think we liked him a little bit better in North Carolina, in terms of his ties to that area, but not for me. Sorry.
All right, Chris Kirk, huge underrated value ? I already mentioned he's probably going to be like the highest owned guy below $7,000. So I don't think anyone's like sleeping on Chris Kirk here. I think he's a fine play, but again, we just talked about some of the other names in that region that if he comes in at like 13% ownership and everyone else is coming in at 3%, I'll just diversify what I would have to spend on Chris Kirk onto 3 other guys, and I think the probability is higher that way.
Yeah, whenever you get double-digit ownership in that sub 7K, that's what you have to do, is you have to pivot off these guys, because what are the chances that these guys are, a bunch of these guys are going to get in the top 10, top 15. So if you do really like them, make sure that your lineups do reflect that. But if you have them at 12, 10% ownership, then that's a lot for a guy at sub 7K. So there's other guys that I like. We mentioned it earlier in the show, so go rewind and watch that part. But yeah, not for me.
Silas, are you playing any JJ Spawn this week? I am not.
I'm not either. It's your boy, though. I thought you loved JJ Spawn.
I do. I like JJ Spawn when he's playing in, not against Dustin Johnson.
Yeah, the Barracuda.
Yeah. That's the one trap. I mean, it's one of these guys is going to pop up, or 2 of them are going to pop up, so you have to pick and choose if you want to go that route. But you have to remember, this is a stacked field, and a lot of these bottom-end guys, when they do pop, are not playing in the Masters, and they're not playing WGCs. They're playing the Greenbrier, where only, instead of having the 25 best players in the world there's like 3 of the top 25. So you really have to temper expectations with a lot of these lower-end guys. And we've seen the winners in the FedEx Cup playoffs, and even a lot of these leaderboards really reflect that over the past 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, you have to take it with a grain of salt too, right? That the last 20, if you're using Fantasy National, the last 24 rounds, and we saw this too with the British, right? You have to really dive a little bit deeper into these, because the last 24 rounds might be the ones that don't correlate to the last 24 of Brooks, of DJ, of these other guys. So be careful. There's guys, again, that's why I always like ownership for these sub 7K guys around that 5 to 8 at the most. If there is someone that I do like that I'm playing. So
Are you using Hatton or Casey this week? I'm using Hatton. I'm not using Casey. You?
I'm flip. I'm using Casey, not Hatton.
Okay. Stu Mange. Oh, I think he's trying to say Stumanji, spelled like Jumanji.
I like Stu Mange.
Yeah, Stu Mange seems priced up relative to the talent in that price range. Do we ride the hot streak or find a pivot? I use Stu Sink, so I'm in on Stumanji.
I mean, at 75, I'd like, again, I'm paying up a little bit. Bryson and Ryan Moore are other guys that I like right by Stumanji.
I like them too, but that's an area that I hit a lot, that mid $7,000 area.
And that's what I was just about to say, that if you are, in that sort of balance where you're playing a lot of, if you're playing the Justin Roses, the high 9Ks, you can diversify down here because there's guys that you were saying, Stumanji, Ryan Moore, Benny Ann a little bit too as well.
I like me some Ben on here.
Exactly. So there's a lot of guys in this price range that I like as well. Stu Sink was one of my last cuts because of that, but totally fine with it. Again, I like guys a little bit more in that price range, but totally fine with Stumanji. He's been playing well.
Kyle says, do you have any idea what the Brooks and Tiger ownerships will be like? Again, like I mentioned before, it's tough to gauge with this top end because it seems really spread out and that one or two guys are going to spike. It doesn't look like that's going to be Brooks. Brooks could be the one guy that finishes in single digits, like 9%. I would project him out around 11. I think Tiger comes in around 15.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we've seen it too, right? The top's going to be evenly split when you look at these guys because of the talent, and then Tiger obviously with the name value and now playing really well. But yeah, Brooks is going to come in the lowest in my opinion in these top guys. So that's why I really like Brooks in terms of the talent. Obviously, it's there, and then the ownership as well.
One and done question. Still have Tiger Woods. Is this the best course to burn him during the playoffs, or is there another course that better suits his game? He's playing next week, right, at TPC Boston?
As of now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather use him there than here.
Yeah, same, because I mean, you can take lesser than driver there. It's kind of you're splitting hairs.
Well, I mean, you don't necessarily need to take less than driver there. Like we've seen Stenson win at that course in the past.
Right.
But the big thing is, I don't think that a bad driver. 1 second. Almost had to sneeze. Isn't going to be as penal as it would be here. Like if you start getting crazy with your driver here, like you're screwed. Like you're in the woods at TPC Boston. It's a bit more open. The rough is a bit more manageable. That I think he can get away with hitting driver almost like he did at PGA Championship next week, right, more so than he could this week.
Yeah, I thought the ceiling was falling down when you said, "Wait a second," there, just in case you had to move out of the way.
No, you know when the sneeze is coming and you can feel it like trickling in. It's like. If you take the deep breath, you can do it. It's like if you never want to cry, just breathe through your mouth, and then you won't cry. Just go.
Like you're learning everything.
I learned that from Lisa Vanderpump on Vanderpump Rules. So
that's quality TV. Lisa, the Vanderpump Rules.
Educational TV. Vanderpump Rules.
Going back to the question, I kind of forget it, but yeah, you're right. Tiger Woods, when the rough isn't as penal, you want to make sure. You want to play him a little bit more in terms of the first two legs of the playoffs. Obviously, are his best chances to win, closing the 2018 season. But this guy's gearing up. He's gearing up for the Ryder Cup. He's feeling good about himself. He's a little bit looser. Yes, all the adrenaline is pumping at the PGA, but I do like him here. For one and done, yeah, I would rather lean more towards Boston. But if he wins here, wouldn't be surprised.
Next question comes from Billy Ho. Can you speak to the rough this week? Will they cut it? They need to cut it. I can speak to the rough. There will be some, so that's good to know. As of right now, it hasn't been trimmed. It played 3.5 inches in 2014. They might bring it down less than that, but it does seem like if you veer off the fairway, you're in the shit, basically.
Yeah, and all the guys are mentioning it, that you want to keep it in the short stuff. Look, fescue at 2 to 3 inches, like again, you're splitting hairs. It's going to be thick. You don't want to get, in there. It's tree line, so you don't want to be fooling around too much with that. Maybe if you have biceps like Brooks, you can get out of it. But outside of that, you don't want to be fooling around with it.
Remember, please give the episode a like. Continue these chats going. We're going to have a chat next week as well. Plus, I'm going to start doing a live football chat during the season as well. If people want to get in on that.
Nice.
Plus, go check out the entire fantasy football draft kit. I got win totals with Custon Jeff coming out tomorrow. That's going to be a must-watch. So give the episode a like, leave an iTunes review, and do not be afraid to become a member of FantasyNational.com. Right now, Reid and I are both members, and we're not having losing seasons. So that's incredible just to begin with, because I always have losing seasons. The next question comes from Stephen Paul. Is this going to be a big week for Sabbatini Weenie in this deeper field? Do you think Big Harry V will still Varner a lot of bonership? Can you please start a red zone for golf and call it green zone? I've already come up with that idea and called it green zones. You're stealing my intellectual property now, pal. But yes, if I could, I would, but I can't because I don't own the rights. I'm out on both those guys.
Yeah, I'm in on that. It's not a haiku, but I'm in on that little stanza there. But no, I'm not in on any of those guys. So fade on that statement. I'm gonna chase that rhyming scheme. It was pretty good, but fade on those guys.
That's not bad. I feel like I need to eliminate a player from my pool between Bryson, Kisner, and Phil. Who do you cut? Phil's gone for me.
Yeah, Phil.
Okay. Thoughts on low price guys, Mitchell and Tway? Again, I think the strength of the field is too much for them.
Same. I'd rather have those guys on driver tracks a little bit more. Obviously, we know these guys can bomb it out there. And like you were saying, when you see Tway, when you see these guys like Love Mark pop up, that comes to mind. Keith Mitchell. These guys are in sort of those tier twos, like a Fort Worth, for instance. Not at this tournament, not with this field. So fade for me.
Christian asks, overweight on Cantlay or split onto Hideki and Scott chairs? I actually just went overweight on Cantlay, used Reid a little bit below him, and faded Scott and Hideki. I was really tempted. Hideki's getting a lot of buzz this week because the irons are coming back, and I see it, but I just couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, Hideki's in that Jordan Spieth conversation of, man, if this guy can just get his game all together, he's one of the best. He was the number 2 ranked golfer in the world at one point. We see the irons coming back. I do like Hideki. And this really comes down to your preference. If you want to go all in, if you're playing GPPs and you want to have that core, go with Cantlay. I think Cantlay is a guy that is coming into form. This course sets up for him. His short game and around the green game is a lot better than what it was earlier in the season. But if you want to split and you're going a little bit balanced, if you're going cash, potentially, I mean, you're talking about guys who potentially could be a little bit safer in cash. And so preference, I'm going all in I'm going overweight on Cantlay just because I like him. And so that would be my preference. But again, if you wanted to split, I wouldn't mind that.
From Billy Thornton, is weather going to be a factor the first few days? Based on what I can see, it won't be. It looks pretty even across both rounds.
Yeah. Again, I'll put up on my blog the weather station that I'm using. I didn't see anything as of today. I checked it this morning, but keep on checking it just to make sure. You never know. Something could come through. I don't think it is, but just check. Keep on checking.
I'll put it in the chat right now, the link to the Windfinder station that I'm using, which is actually incredibly close to the course. It's one nice thing about the Northeast is that there's a lot of weather stations, because I think the Windfinder is based out of there, so they just put them up. Tyler asks, I know he sprays a little bit, but what are your thoughts on Lovemark this week? He has a phenomenal short game and rolled the putter well last week. I'm out on Jamie Lovemark. Listen, I feel like we talk ourselves into Lovemark all the time, and it just doesn't work. And that's usually at, like, bad tournaments. Now we're at a good tournament.
Yeah.
Pass.
And a good field. And I think that's what you meant by a good tournament. Yeah, Lovemark, I just mentioned it. Go to Brian Gay. Go to Brian Gay at 7,100. Lovemark he's number 1 in scrambling over the last 24, but there's a reason, because he's number 1. He's not playing well. So, again, that's one of these things. Take it with a grain of salt. Yes, he's doing well scrambling, but not for me. No Lovemark.
How well does Austin Cook fit this course? I actually think he's a pretty decent fit, but his game has been so up and down. It's funny, we talk about like the rookie wall and like football and things like that. I think we're starting to see that now with some of the rookie players that had a lot of success really from like the swing season into the early part of the season. Like Cook has been so up and down and so inconsistent that if his driver leaves him a little bit and he's not hitting all the fairways, I think he's in a lot of trouble. He does have a good short game and he is a good putter, so I understand how he could correlate really well here. And I know people are using him. He was one of the last cuts on my list, but I decided to go with the high volume scorer and a more unpredictable player like Lahiri instead.
Oh, you're playing Lahiri.
I am playing Lahiri.
Oh, man, I hope the Lahiri guy comes in the chat and just puts it on all caps. I am playing some Austin Cook. I agree with you. It's sort of the Reevy effect, right? If we can put a name to it, where these guys, and Reevy actually played really well earlier this season and then hit a wall. Austin Cook in the last few tournaments, he's got a top 30, I believe, and he's obviously sprinkled in some missed cuts. And we see that game can be there, and you don't necessarily need to be a bomb and gouge guy. And Austin Cook isn't that. He's gaining strokes fairway. I think he's top 10 fairways gained over the last 24. And so there is, a narrative that I'm playing with Cook that I do like in this price range. But 2 of 20 lineups. I'm not spending a lot on Cook down in that range.
Joe asked, Varner or Hoffman? Neither for me. Varner for Reid. That's where he landed on it. Jared asked, Pat, you didn't mention your boy C. Woo! I've heard a few mentions that Pete Dye correlates to this designer. Any interest in Siwoo? I do. That's why I bet him at 200 to 1 with a top 5 to go along with it. This is the first week I'm going to follow my own advice and not put him in my DraftKings lineup because all he ever does is ruin my DraftKings lineup. Although he was a part of my 20K lineup, I think. So that worked out. That was in the Pete Dye course. Listen, I like Siwoo because of the talent. He has an excellent short game. If you can start finding some fairways, he can compete at any course there is. But he's so unpredictable that he can blow up your lineups pretty quickly. So if you want to use him in a GPP, go ahead. I'm not recommending that, but 200 to 1, it seems too low.
Yeah, and we get Seamus Powers at like 500 to 1 right next to him. That's one leverage point, right? Again, he is the Ricky Bobby of DFS golf. He's either coming first or last. You mentioned it every single time Siwoo comes up. Better bet, like you were saying, than he is a DraftKings play. But in that 6-5 range, what else are you getting? You're getting a winner of the Players, one of the hardest fields of the season outside the majors. So I'm okay with that bet, not a DraftKings play.
Molinari seems like he fits really well. Are you guys liking what you're seeing from him? I am. Where did you land on Francesco?
Yeah, I like Francesco. I'm just going to match field with Francesco, not overweighting him.
All right, thoughts on Sink, DeChambeau, and the Poulter combo? I actually think I have one of those lineups, so I'm in on that.
Yeah, I like Poulter. I think, especially with the Thunder Bear coming in and stealing his guaranteed spot on the Ryder Cup, I think Poulter comes out a little fiery. Again, you can't predict emotions, but if there is a guy that you can see his emotions wearing on his sleeve, it's Poulter. I do like him at that price range. Nas also there. So for me, it's Poulter.
Carrie asked, would you consider Dahmen, Kirk, Armour all in the same lineup? I wouldn't, but if you really want to go stars and scrubs, then that's your path to it.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, if you want to pair DJ with one of the top guys, you can have those 3 guys too, but that's high risk, but potentially high reward.
Kevin asks, if you're making 10 lineups, how many players should you include in your player pool? That's up to you and the amount of risk that you want to go to. Some people will tell you 8 guys, and you go all in on basically all of them and mix and match to get the different combinations. I'd probably play 12 or 13, depending on if I isolated at the top, if I wanted to spread out 2 lineups with guys in the 7th and low 7s, high 6s. So it depends on what your strategy is for the week. I wouldn't go too crazy and play 30 guys, though.
No, and it also depends too on on the tournament. The majors, you could, there's guys in your core that you get at a smaller or at a lesser price. With this one, like you were saying, for me in terms of reference points in my player pool, I'll probably use 20 when I'm making 20 to 25 lineups. And so if you want to use that as sort of your barometer, then you can. So I would say, in that 10 to 12 would be my answer.
Next question comes from William Custer, General Custer. Ryan Moore's been playing pretty well, but is 0-3 here in his career. So for reference, that's in 2014, 2010, and 2008. So Ryan Moore, a decade ago, bad at this course. Are you out? Because I'm in.
No, I'm in. It's hard to go against the iron play, especially the long irons. Ryan Moore is a long iron maven. That's why his driving distance doesn't stat out well. So I'm in. He's playing well, so I like him.
Brian says, RH says, Brian Harman, course, seems like a good fit. Thoughts? I'm just usually out on Brian Harman to begin with, but I think that does make a lot of sense. It's just, I've seen nothing from him that would inspire me whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know what his world ranking is or what his if he's top 125 in the money list, and so it's just I haven't seen him pop all season, so I'm not playing Armour. Or excuse me, I'm not playing Harman.
Brian asked, Tway has been in goid form. Not much mentioned about him. Thoughts? You want to play Kevin Tway in this field? Go nuts. I'm not.
No, I'm out on Tway.
He's lost at least 1.5 strokes with his irons in each of the past 2 tournaments. He came 11th and 17th in those because he's putting the lights out right now. So if he can continue the hot putter, listen, he can compete because the short game's not bad. But where this is going to be a harder course to scramble with tinier greens, the approach could be even worse. And where it's not like a bomb and gouge type of place, that he might experience some problems. No thanks for me on Kevin Tway. Next question, bubble players. How much do you take into account the fact that some players need to place well to move on? Would you be more attracted to a player who shows current form or is on the bubble? Current form. Don't put any nonsense into this bubble stuff. If they put it this way, if it was really important for them to move on, they would have played better throughout the year.
Right, exactly. Current form, you always go current form. If you want to play course history, potentially at some places, obviously when you get Pete Dye's, there's the Kisner, Kuchar, Snedeker narrative, but always current form.
Thomas, when you make your lineups, do you liken to make a morning wave and afternoon? Some depends on the weather. This week I don't see anything, so I don't care about that.
Nope. I put T-stacks if you want to put it in my column, but I'm not playing any.
Every time I pick Adam Scott, he falls flat. When I don't pick him, he plays like the world number one.
You're welcome.
Who do we take off an Adam Scott pivot? I'm using Cantlay in that spot, or I'm paying up for Webb. I'm not using Adam Scott because I decided to pay down $2,000 and use like 80% Adam Scott and just take Keegan Bradley.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Adam Scott, I'm not playing him. Obviously, for me, Hideki, even Snedeker, right? Snedeker at $100 more. He's a momentum player. And we obviously see what he could do last week. It's a different tournament, different field, different course. So, yes, there is, some risk involved with Snedeker, but he's a momentum guy. We've seen it where he's rattled off top finishes in 2014 and in 2016 or 2015, one of those years. So, I like Snedeker a little bit more. I faded Scott as much because there's other guys that I do like.
The thing with Snedeker is I'm kind of with you that he can ride some form, and I think that he might come in low owned, but it's almost akin to Adam Scott. Like, people were laughing at me about playing Adam Scott when he was $7,500. Now they're like, I want to play him at $8,900. Like,
right, exactly.
They just seem wildly overpriced, and they're coming in because Scott has good course history and he came inside the top 5 at the PGA Championship. Sned's coming off the win. They can both perform well, but like I'm looking for some value, and I just don't feel like they're values right now. Like, are either one of those, like, they might beat Patrick Reed this week and they might beat Patrick Cantlay, but is there any reason for those two guys to be priced higher than those two?
No. I mean, when you look at it, like Patrick Reed is a guy who, for whatever reason, goes underpriced in these bigger tournaments unless he wins. He sort of has the Jason Day effect where Patrick Reed, Brooks Koepka, these guys don't get the pricing respect that they should get in terms of their talent. You're exactly right. Adam Scott, because of that, right, there's other guys that you'd rather pay less. And so at that price, I'm fading them.
Bryson, Poulter, or Xander? I'll take Bryson.
Poulter.
Okay. Poulter would be my second on that list. Nice. Day-Gay combo this week. I think, by the way, we've been talking. Yeah. Are you as big on Jason Day as I am?
Yeah, I like Jason Day, my doppelganger. I can't self-appoint that, actually. You have to say that. But at any rate, yeah, Jason Day, look, short game, right? We talked about it. Around the green, the irons are coming back a little bit. The putting is there. That's what you want at this course, around the greens and putting. And who's the best in the business this year and this season? Jason Day. So I do like Day.
Kyle asks, I'm in a 7-person $140 qualifier for the $888 main event next week. Any advice on lineup construction when only facing 6 guys? Balance/cash lineup? Yeah, I think so. I think that you don't need to take many risks whatsoever. You can play a chalky lineup. You can play a very low-risk lineup. But if you did want to use one of those top guys and play sort of, not necessarily stars and scrubs, but if you want to start with like Day, move down to like Webb or move down to like Cantlay and then sprinkle in the $7,000 guys, I think that is an approach that you can take.
Yeah, because we talked about it, right? Those mid 7K guys, we like a bunch of them. So you can start your lineups. And really it comes down to if you wanted to potentially pivot off the top guys, we talked about Brooks being lowest owned in that area. But anyone you choose from that top, it's cash is the preferred strategy in that. But if you wanted to, there are guys that you can pay down right in that 75, 74 range. I'll be totally fine with. So I would go balanced.
Struggling to decide on my one-and-done pick, down to Hatton, Kisner, and Hideki, or Spieth. I think I just roll the dice on Spieth here. Like, where else are you going to use him? I don't love Spieth, but he's significantly better than all those guys.
Exactly. I mean, who does Paul Shags have? Is he in this one?
He hasn't decided yet. Paul, have you decided yet?
I've whittled it down to 2 guys, and both of their first name is Patrick.
All right, he's down between 2 guys named Patrick. Put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I would use Spieth in that spot.
Need to pick 2 from DJ, JT, and Koepka, and I love all 3. I'll go Thomas and Brooks.
Yeah, Same with me.
Yeah, so DJ's going to be highly owned. DJ's the number one player in the world. He's great. But you just get so much of a discount not taking DJ that I do think that you can use that extra salary cap to really build the bottom of your lineups with the other two.
Yeah.
So if you have to fade one, it would be DJ for me.
Yeah, same here.
What are Bryce Garnett or Ted Potter? That's a good question. I'm trying to round out one of my DK lineups. Bradley or Grillo at $7,000. I'm going Keegan Bradley.
I'm going Grillo.
Okay, that'll be a fun one. Spieth ownership projection.
Yeah.
I have him anywhere between 12 and 15%.
Who is this?
Spieth.
Spieth? Yeah, you're going to get him, like you were saying, at that 10 to 12%, which, again, I don't mind. We usually see him in that 15 to 18 because of name value and what we've seen in the past. And so at that lower team in that 10 to 12, I don't mind that.
Thoughts on Woodland and Sink this week? I'm using Sink and I'm not using Woodland. I'm just trying to find the ownership on Woodland. Yeah, he's up around like 15% right now. I like him. He's fine. But it's the other guys right below him. Like I'm playing Poulter, Moore, Sink, DeChambeau, and On right below him. Not everyone can make the cut, and I try to diversify with those guys a little bit more. I think he does set up well, but I think people are kind of drinking the Gary Kool-Aid right now.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him kind of pop right at the PGA, and his off the tee game is strong. And when we see guys that can take less than driver and still get it out there, 300 yards, Gary Woodland is that guy. You need to keep in the fairway. I do like him. One of the big reasons why I cut some of these guys like Sink, right, and potentially guys above Gary Woodland like Leishman or Xander, is I want to play Gary Woodland. I think in terms of his strength, it fits this course. So I do like him. Not going to be overweight just because I like Poulter not better, but I will have some Woodland.
Christopher Harris needs help with his one and done. Pick between Reid, Justin Thomas, and Kuchar. Love the show. Wish I could give it 20 likes. I wish you could give it 20 likes too. So hopefully everyone else out there watching can give it. We can get up to 20 more likes here in the next minute, and that'll be fantastic and help promote the show. For me, I guess you can save Justin Thomas because he's going to play all the way to the Tour Championship. So Patrick Reed for me.
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. I mean, Kuchar is just, God, he obviously, we say Kuchar-esque. We want Kuchar-esque type golfers here, but I'm not playing Kuchar.
Yeah, neither am I. We want like vintage Kuchar, like Kuchar from like 5 years ago.
Right, exactly. So Patrick Reed for me.
Next question. Thoughts on Grace? This is really interesting. Seems like a good spot for him to come out of nowhere in top 10. I kind of agree, except I'm a coward and I have no guts, so I'm not playing him. But if he can hit the fairways, he's an awesome around the green player, and his putting is just so up and down that you almost have to throw it out, that he can be the best, he can be the worst, whatever. But his around the green game is really good, and if this is a course where like -8 to -12 is the winning score, that's like Brendan Grace zone. But then you look at his results, and you're like, oh, Brendan Grace. So if you have guts, you can play a 1% owned Brendan Grace for sure.
Right, exactly. Because we kind of danced around him, right? We talked about the guys that we like a little bit more in that price range. Yeah, you're going to get this guy at sub 5% ownership. And where we see too is obviously his around the green game, his proximity. His long irons are there, right? They're there because that's sort of his style of play. So if you want to play him, if you have guts, do it. I'm not playing him. There's other guys that I like better, but I don't mind it.
Dustin asks, top 3 stats to use on Fantasy National and what percentage of each? That, my friend, is the beauty of the site. That's up to you. What I used for mine, I'm not going to give away my percentages. People can't copy my crappy model. But I used approach as by far my most significant one. I then used putting, and then I used par 4 scoring. Those are my big 3 this week.
Yeah, so mine were tee to green, par 4 scoring, and putting.
Okay. A lot of people are targeting Riviera as a comp. Taking any flyers on Perez or CH3 down the board? I actually didn't love Riviera as a comp. I know some players have played well at that course that have played well here too. But I actually thought the Honda and Heritage were a little bit better for the style and strategy of this course, and Wentworth over at the BMW Championship. So those were the 3 that I was targeting. So Riviera, I know I've heard it talked up, and maybe people are right about it, but it didn't fall into what I was lining up with.
Yeah, Bethpage is something that I'm looking at as well in terms of I do like the Honda call in terms of off the tee, but if I had to add to that, Bethpage would be the only other corollary that I was potentially using as an angle.
Is it a good idea or bad idea to use all of the top players over $10,000, but only say 1 or 2 as core plays and the rest in 1 or 2 lineups? I think, it all depends on the amount of lineups that you're playing. I played 20, and I wanted to really concentrate my core, so I didn't use DJ, I didn't use Tiger, and I didn't use Brooks. I used a lot of Day, and I used a lot of Justin Thomas. But that's a decision that I make. I know there's a lot of people, instead of going like 60% Day, 40% Justin Thomas, that kind of ratio, that they'll just take 20% of everyone at the top to really lock in some of that win equity and hope their concentrated core at the bottom really comes through. So I think there's many ways that you can approach this. I think it depends on how you want to do things. I'm sort of an all-in or all-out type of player. Some people don't like to play that strategy, and both are successful, both are losing. So it all depends on the week that you want to do it. But I would say that don't try to change up your methodology too often. If you're going to play it one way one week, you should try to stick to that to really give yourself a sample to see if it is successful for you. Because a lot of people play a strategy one week and it doesn't work. They're like, well, this is stupid. But it's 1 week. It's 1 week, especially in golf, that is so high variance that you really do need to spend a lot of time going over things and letting the sample play itself out to truly determine whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the top guys, I'm in the same vein, and that's what makes it a beautiful thing is like you think that Brooks is cheaper, going to be less owned, and is going to play better, right? It's sort of Captain Obvious here, then you're going to use him. And so for me, I like to keep that. I like to condense my core just because you want to start building a case for your strategy. If you don't have a foundation or a basis of what to change and where to pivot, then you're never going to know. You're going to always pay the rake. You're never going to know what to do in terms of that strategy. Now, tournament to tournament, that strategy may change, but for me, it's that core stays the same. I want core guys. I want about 20 to 25 players, depending on how many lineups I'm making, especially if I'm doing that 20 max tournament. So for me, I keep those guys at the top, probably 2 to 3. And for me, that's Brooks. Jay Rose is up there. And I forget the last one, and Jason Day. So those are my guys that I want to play, and I'm playing a lot.
I used a lot of Justin Rose as well. Boyd asked, just curious to what each way means in regards to betting. I'm new to the betting term. So each way is not a bet that is offered by every single bookmaker out there. But basically what it is, it separates your outright bet into whatever the each way is. For me, on the book that I play on, it's top 5. So if I bet $20 on someone who's $100 to or 100 to 1 to win, I would get 10 of my $20 bet towards the 100 to 1, and then $10 bet towards the each way. So in my circumstance, it's a top 5 finish at 1/4 those odds. So it would be $10 towards 25 to 1. So it splits up your outright bet into 2. So that's what the each way is.
Yeah, can't wait to play the each way here in the contiguous 48, and hopefully then in the 50.
Yeah, because you're always in Hawaii too, so you got to figure that out. But
it's gonna be 10 years until that happens.
It's especially valuable for first round leaders because basically you hit a first round leader each way, you win like a little bit of money each week, but then you can bet 10 guys every week that if you hit the outright, you win big. You hit the each way, you get a little bit of your money back, and it just reloads you for next week to take that opportunity again.
Exactly.
At least that's where I've had the most success with each way betting.
I can't wait.
Thoughts on Tway and Keith Mitchell? Talked about that. Pass on both. Fleetwood or Molinari? I'm in on Fleetwood. If you had to pick between one of those two, I know you like both. Which one would it be?
Fleetwood.
Okay. Rafa Cabrera-Bello or Leishman? I would play Leishman.
Yeah, Leishman for me too as well.
CT Pan or Dahmen? I would play Dahmen. I would play CT Pan and fade Dahmen. And tell whoever's behind you to shut up.
Quiet. Okay. Dahmen.
Okay. Do you think that Rahm will bomb and gouge or show some more sense and club down when needed? He'll probably bomb and gouge, and it might work out for him. Rahm is just so unpredictable week to week to week. Although he is in good form right now and playing well, and I don't think he's getting a whole lot of chatter this week. Have you heard much about Rahm?
No, and I think the reason why, right? You look at recent form. He's not been playing too well, but of course, he's one of the top guys. He's one of the top guys. If you want some ownership relief, Rahm is right there. So I don't mind paying up for Rahm. I don't mind rostering Rahm, but at the same time, I'd rather roster guys a little bit more so in that 9K range, have more confidence in like a Molinari, for instance. And so I haven't heard much about Rahm. Don't mind. Again, if he keeps it in the fairway, he's going to be fantastic, and he's not going to be heavily owned. So if you want to play Rahm, I'm not playing him, but if you want to, that's fine.
Jake asked projected Snedeker ownership. I have him around 6%.
Yeah, I got him around 5 to 6% as well, which is where you just won. To have a guy at single digit ownership is pretty good.
Paul asks, why is there only 198 entries in the Fantasy Golf World Championship? What do I look like, the tournament director? I have no fucking idea. Molinari or Rahm in one and done, I would take Molinari.
Yeah, same here, Molinari.
All right, let's just rapid fire. We're already over an hour into this, so please, everyone, give the episode a like. We're going to try to get to everyone's question in rapid fire fashion here. Do you like Burger here? I have plenty of Bradley, but need a couple more in that 7K flat range. Burger's fine. I was on him last week in terms of betting, not so much for DraftKings because of that injury. I thought I'd roll the dice, but I'm off Burger here. I'm not using Griot, but I would like to use Griot. More than that, I'd pay down for Chappell. Of course, I'm going to go up $200 and use Luke List. Brian Gay is right there as well, so that's where I would go.
Yeah, exactly. So no burger for me.
Okay. JJ Spawn in Vegas stacking 100%. Am I crazy? Yes.
Absolutely crazy.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Thoughts on Koepka? Like Koepka, I'm not using him, but you're using him. He just didn't make my cut.
Yep, using him.
This guy says, don't listen to Reid. Savvy move. I live around the...
Yeah, don't.
This guy says, I live around the block from the course, not a bomber's course. Do you have any love for Na this week, since he's accurate off the tee and scrambles well? I do have interest in Na, especially as it pertains to DraftKings over betting. Plus his caddy, local guy, he's going to know that New Jersey wave. So I like Kevin Na.
Yeah, I like Kevin Na as well. When you look at if you wanted to use Riviera as a correlation, he obviously played well there. Keeps in the fairway, doesn't hit it long, but long irons really well, and he puts and around the green. That's sort of his style. So give me Kevin Na.
Did I miss Bryson talk? Sure, we're both playing him, so we both like Bryson.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm overexposed with Billy Ho. Talk me out of it, or tell me to roll on with the Ho. I'm not using any Billy Ho. I think he's gonna be like uber popular. Everyone's talking up Billy Ho this week. I get it, but I don't think he has a substantially better chance of winning than any of the other guys around him.
Yeah. I like Billy Ho. I think we saw him at an increased price, obviously, last week in a different tournament. Now we see him at 73. His ball striking stats are all elite, so I do like Billy Ho. I'm playing him.
Adam Hadwin this week? I'm not using him, although he has me he's made a high percentage of cuts this year, which I just didn't expect.
Yeah, I like him. I mean, at 6,300, if you want to play the elite stack up there, then you can play Adam Hadwin. Again, using Riviera potentially as a corollary. He played well there, so I do like Hadwin.
Do you want to answer this one, or should I let the chat answer this one? Ryan asks, what about Oosthuizen is safe or not safe?
Is that like what's safe? Is that he's breathing?
Yeah.
I mean,
we don't even know that right now. But,
exactly. Maybe he has a trailer. He's sleeping well.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Louis has the highest WD rate. I mean, he is a good player.
Yeah.
He's definitely not going to be chalky, especially after withdrawing at the PGA Championship and screwing over everyone's lineups. But he's always a player that you can get behind if you want to. I'm just never really in the Louis camp, so I never use him. I know if you talk to Ulrich, he'd be like 100% in on Louis.
Yeah, there's some guys that just love Louis. I don't like him, so I'm not playing Louis either.
Okay.
Nope.
Let's see. Sorry if it was asked, but any love for JJ Spawn? We're both out on him. How does Siwoo's golf game set up for him this weekend? If he's making the weekend, it sets up really well. The problem is getting to the weekend. So only a bet at 200 to 1. No DK for us. Thoughts on Hoffman as first round leader? Always overvalued as first round leader now. People are savvy to that. Ian Poulter is the new Charlie Hoffman, at least in terms of majors, of being the guy who's just real hot out of the gate instead of Charlie Hoffman. Why is Schneiderjan so damn cheap this week? Probably because he's not very good. That would be my guess.
Right, yeah, exactly. He did pop a couple of weeks ago, but no Ollie for me. He's been bad for a majority of the season, so no Ollie for me.
Ryder and Wawrinski as punt plays. Again, I think they logically make sense. I think they're a good skill set here, but I just don't think they're a high enough quality of player that I'd really want to target those two in particular, so I'm passing.
Yeah, same here, pass. I'd rather have some other guys in this stronger field, so pass.
Molinari, Sneds, Kirk, Brooks ownership. Let's see here. Molinari around like 17%. Brooks anywhere from like 10 to 12. What was the other one? Kirk like
Sneds.
12%. Sneds around 6%.
Yep.
Curious, how much do you spend per week on DraftKings and how much for regular bets? That is personal to me. I don't ask you what you're betting every week, but I do spend more on betting than I do spend on DraftKings. I'm not a high volume or high stakes DraftKings player by any means. Any love for RCB? Not so much for me this week. I get it, but just he didn't fit my build.
Yeah, we saw him last week too, right? We were kind of in on him last week. Didn't make my build either. There's some other guys that I like in that high 7 range, so no for me.
Do you guys like Bubba for GPPs? Reed does. I do not. If Matsuyama can putt this week, he wins. That's a pretty bold statement, considering he's been putting like all right and not winning. So,
yeah,
good luck with that. One and done pick: JT, Koepka, or DJ. I'll say DJ.
I would say Koepka.
Koepka? Yeah, Koepka's good on that spot. I mean, I would save Justin Thomas for the Tour Championship if you haven't used him.
Right, exactly. Right.
Thoughts on Kirk or Streelman? We already went over. I'm out on both.
Yeah, same with me.
Okay. Pat, are you wearing pants? No, I'm not. I'm actually not.
Best question asked all hour. Yeah, I can't answer that question.
Yeah, you can't even see. So what's the difference? Seems like a CH3 fit pass. Hideki at 10 to 15 to 20 or ZJ? You know what? I would take ZJ over Hideki based on the ownerships. Really, if you get 1/3 the percentage on ZJ, I do like his skill set. I do think he's overpriced, but I don't see why he can't compete here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to fit on ownership, I mean, absolutely. Or if you want to chase on ownership, absolutely. You know, Zach Johnson is a guy that is sort of under the radar in terms of playing pretty well this year. Like you were saying, overpriced just a tad. I like Hideki at 88, and that's the reason why I'm moving more towards Hideki as opposed to Zach Johnson. But again, I'm one of my core guys is Cantlay. I'm fading Finau this week. So those are some of the guys that I do like in that high 8K range.
Did we already talk about Keegan? Talk me off that ledge. Yes, we did. Very minimal shares of Keegan for me this week, around 10%. Bill asked, UFC Lincoln is almost here. Oh boy, stop the fucking presses. Paul and Cody's breakdown almost ready. It hasn't been filmed yet. It's filming later today as we do. I mean, they follow the same schedule like every single week. They film at like 4:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, and it comes out Wednesday night. I don't see why that would change. All right. Y'all good? Hearing a lot of yelling and banging in the distance. That's on Reed's side because the people have no etiquette where Reed is sitting.
None. Zero. Bunch of hooligans.
Day ownership percentage. I got Day coming around 16%.
Yeah, same with me. This one you're seeing a little bit. You usually see Day not highly owned in this range. So I do like Day. I think he gets that 50% ownership. Final
question goes to Justin. Oh, and now there's another one. Rahm and Kirk or Fleetwood and Keegan? I would go, I mean, I don't have any of those builds, so Fleetwood and Keegan for me.
Yeah, same with me.
Okay, last one. Or thoughts on Adam Scott? Pass. Ryan asked, last question. Thoughts on Jason Kokrak? Seems to be a guy who could club down off the tee, keep it in the fairways, and do well here. He could. Not for me, though. I don't want to risk to find out about Jason Kokrak.
Yeah, I'm not on Kokrak either, so pass on me.
Oh, Anthony says that I am transgendered. No question. It sounds like that Anthony is some sort of transgender phobe. So, I mean, just throwing out, I don't see why that would matter. I'm trying to give you golf information, whether I am or whether I'm not. It doesn't really matter because we're here for golf. Benny Ann thoughts? I'm in. Thoughts on Brian Gay? We spent like the first 15 minutes talking about how we like Gay.
Yep.
That's it. I'm going to ban this guy making his just really weird comments. Banned! I almost got through the entire thing for the channel without banning anyone. Sorry, Guy. But
Jeez,
you're banned.
Come on. Class it up.
Kisner, Stanley, or Billy Ho? I like Kisner.
Billy Ho for me. Those three.
All right. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience live viewer Q&A. I'll have my cheat sheet updated right after this. You can check out my betting cheat sheet up on the Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. Reed, tell everyone about your blog, where they can find your work, and follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, DK Live, DK Playbook. On the Facebook Live, watch the DK Sweat. We talk about golf, all things fantasy sports. And so that usually is, I believe, 6 to 7 Eastern. So tune in Monday through Friday. All my links are on my Twitter page, so Reed T. Fowler.
All right, and if you haven't already, give the episode a like on your way out and leave an iTunes review, or just subscribe and watch us on demand or listen on demand. Bring it with you. This kills your entire commute home. We've been doing this for like an hour and 15 minutes. It's probably too much talk about everything, but I hope we've helped you out with all of your questions for the Northern Trust. Subscribe and become a member to fantasynational.com right now. There might be a good yearly deal coming down the pike at you. If it's something that you were testing out, wanted to know if you want to get into, yearly membership might be the exact time to get in for these playoffs, take you all the way to next year's playoffs and through the swing season where the softest money actually occurs. And like I mentioned, Win Totals NFC show with Feinberg and Endercuss coming out tomorrow, and that'll do it. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.